My name is Bob Klein. I'm CEO of Digital Scientists. We're having our webinar today about AI readiness. It's actually kind of how to run an AI readiness workshop. We'll go ahead and get started. Just bear with me. Okay. So getting started with AI, a webinar series for innovators, the AI Readiness Workshop. Part of the goal of this is to help someone assess your organization's readiness to get started with AI in the organization as a program. A little bit more about why are we launching this series. And I've got this, you might wonder what this image is. This is actually from SpaceX. It was from a recent launch. I thought it was just kind of an amazing video, and it's all about launching rockets. Anyway, this is really focused on helping innovators get started with AI. How do they make progress? There's a really big gap between all the hype and ambition and actual execution. So I wanted to share a structured approach that can help your organization make traction with AI. And part of that is helping innovators figure out where things can get bogged down, and while also helping them set expectations. There are a lot of common needs across industries, so that's why this is kind of across industry. So this is the first in a series of 3 webinars, the Readiness Workshop, where we talk about readiness and data governance, security, alignment, things like that. The next one is called the AI Opportunity Assessment. It's really, defining the business case for investments. How do you define that business case? What are the, how do you prioritize? How do you really get a sense of, kind of the ROI potential? And then the last one is MVPs for AI. MVP stands for minimum viable products. So it's how do you start building out your AI capability in a really managed, low-risk approach, again, with a focus on near-term ROI. How do you kind of go after what they call the proverbial low-hanging fruit? So research, calibrate, create. Now, just a little bit about us. Like I said, I'm the CEO of Digital Scientists. We're a technology strategy innovation firm. We're headquartered in Alpharetta, Georgia. We really do help companies leverage technology to improve and drive return on investment. Part of what's different about us is that we help manage and own the risk and complexity of a lot of projects, and we tend to stick around and help deliver the actual outcomes. So we deliver actual products, services, and solutions, and do a lot of work behind the scenes, I would say. We're want to be part of your success story. Now, quickly, we're a US-based team. We do have a large nearshore partner focused in product management, research, and design and development. A lot of different skills. Like I said, it's a very, very experienced team. But this isn't about us. This is about you. So this is our agenda for today. We've got 9 things to cover, from basics and potential from AI, actual use case exploration, planning frameworks, data governance, security, data integrity, ethical AI, risk assessment, and a framework for AI experiments. Again, another SpaceX video. This was just recent, and I thought, well, if we're able to do that with rockets, we can help you get started with AI. I just found that to be a really incredible video. So let's put everything into perspective. Okay, getting started. Number 1, AI basics and potential. What is AI? Really high level. There's a lot more detail on this, and I include references. At the beginning, I forgot if you all have any questions throughout this webinar that you'd like answered, I will try and answer them at the end. Or if they're really if they're in the flow, I'll try and respond to them. But I have a good bit of information to cover, and this is really meant to be a resource, but I don't want this just to be a lecture. So I appreciate any kind of feedback or questions, things like that. This is just something I grabbed from McKinsey, high-level definition of artificial intelligence. There are a lot of questions about what it can and can't do. And actually, it's been around for a while. We've worked in machine learning going back probably 7, 8 years. And there's that's all, you'll hear all these terms, but they're all related. This is how they're related. AI is kind of the top of the umbrella, then machine learning and deep learning and generative AI. So if you all have been using ChatGPT, you've been using generative AI, and that's where there's a lot of excitement around these large language models that actually generate content for you from a text prompt, things like that. So it's kind of prompt engineering. So anyway, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this area. There's a lot of information that you can get on the web all about AI, what it is and what it isn't. Another view of things, if the other one's kind of text heavy, but it gives us the idea of AI being a number of different things. Again, an umbrella term around machine learning, natural language processing, speech, all these other things, expert systems, robotics, and vision. And on the left-hand side are more kind of the use cases, how we're using these technologies, these aspects of AI. And again, much more detail on this, but I just found these two definitions helpful. Again, now more on the potential. What's the potential for AI? And I tend to boil them down into 3 areas. So productivity, insights, and IP capture. So productivity, and that's actually, this is a slide that talks about what most people think as a perceived benefit of AI from the public. So it's all around efficiency, automation, cost savings, honestly. Like, how do I do more with less? There's a lot of opportunity for productivity tools. How do people get more things done? So productivity is a big part of it. Some of the productivity aspects of things also represent lower risk to test out, and they're more manageable, and it can generate a faster ROI if you can actually see benefit and time savings, for example. The next is insights. That's kind of a broad term. I would say what we're seeing is an interest in real-time insights, like real-time information, real-time modeling, helping people make the right decision at the right time, giving them all the data and giving them models to say this decision is going to have this kind of downstream impact. So it's not like generic insights post facto. It's like, no, how do I use AI to help make the smartest decision I can when I'm able to make that decision? And last is IP capture, really, so intellectual property capture. Large organizations, large and small, tend to have kind of knowledge distributed, maybe not standard operation, procedures defined. Essentially, a lot of knowledge is in people's heads. So how do we capture that information? And AI is, in a sense, a form of like a brain. So it has all the business rules. It knows what to do, knows how you get things done. That's really IP capture. So it's how do I preserve and standardize and monitor and improve, IP capture. So that's really the potential. Number 2 is going to be, we'll talk through some use cases. Like, okay, well, that's great at a high level, but how does it affect my industry? Like, where do we get started? And that's typically identifying use cases. What are the use cases that are being, that where people are already working on AI solutions? I think there is a lot of AI functionality that's being introduced into existing systems. So you're probably using it now, even if you don't know about it. But I have listed here different industry verticals, different use cases, different value propositions. And for example, in retail with personalized recommendations, right? So if you want to create something that's more personalized at an individual level based on user behavior and user events and everything you know about that user, you can now do that pretty easily. And the result of that might be better user engagement and faster, let's say, faster repurchase of something, right? So, or better client retention. So these are all listed. And I think it's important for your organization that you understand kind of the most obvious use cases, but it's also important that you come up with your own. Um, Now here's the other slide where we talk about other verticals. It's we've touched a number of these, but I think there's a industry vertical set of use cases. The set of use cases I don't have here are the ones that might be um, productivity by function inside your organization. So I've started to see a lot of interest in sales enablement tools, how to make our sales team more productive. So giving them insights that are not kind of easily accessible today, automating the creation of bids and proposals, automating the communication with suppliers, things like that. So it's, and that's, I don't have that, but here's just these cases might be helpful for you to think about and the value proposition. But if you're putting together an AI program, coming up with a use case examples is a good kind of way to educate the team about what's possible and what others are doing. So on the use case topic, I just have a couple examples, a couple cases here that we've done. And one is this product called Health Context we've built, which leverages AI. There's a for transcription, so from speech to text. So we automate the transcription using something called the Whisper model from OpenAI. These are the people behind ChatGPT, and have created a service that'll transcribe a telehealth session and then label it. So label all the words based on if they're health relevant words. So it's clear if somebody's talking about a symptom or if there's a focus on medications, things like that. And then try and make sense out of what's being said about the conversation. And we generate what's called a SOAP note, which is a standard form of documentation of provider interactions with patients. So there are many other services out there like that, but this is one that we generated, and it's all about saving the healthcare provider time. They currently have to manage this themselves. They created the documentation themselves, but what we end up doing is creating really a recommendation or just serve it up as a draft to the provider to review it, right? So one important thing about a lot of these models is we don't automate all of this. We're really just trying to make the providers more productive and save them time. This other one is, again, healthcare. It's not the only source of opportunity. It just happens to be these two cases I could put my hands on. This was one around optimizing the ability to code for risk adjustment in a large integrated healthcare provider in the Midwest. And let's just say, what AI helped us do was to automate kind of the identification and resolution of discrepancies within patient records. We also got to incorporate information in AI that wasn't previously there. So we made the model even, stronger and smarter in a way. And in the end result, it was essentially a 20x return after a 6-month project. So it was a considerable return. And it was recurring on an annual basis. So there's a lot of value created in probably just 6 months. So those are two examples. I want to move on to number 3, where I talk about really planning frameworks, like how to get started. Like why did I put all these things together? They're really things to think through before you start an AI program or project. And if you don't think through them, there's a risk that they can kind of bog down your efforts downstream, where people might ask you about them. And it's just really to really do your due diligence on these kinds of efforts, right? So they can reach escape velocity. I guess I should use those metaphors. But everyone knows a traditional, SWOT analysis: strengths, weakness, opportunity, threats. It's usually a strategic framework for evaluating the company and the business that you're in. But in this case, I'm saying an AI SWOT analysis. And now this is not a traditional SWOT analysis run by AI, but it's a SWOT analysis of your organization's ability to leverage AI. Are you ready to do it? So it's a little different. So bear with me while I walk through it as an example. I've got an example, and then I've got a couple benchmarks to talk about next, and you'll see what I mean. So, for example, if an organization is ready to leverage AI, it has a strong data infrastructure. It has robust data collection and management systems. It has high quality, accessible data. We'll talk about that. It has a technical expertise. It has skilled workforce, people that are proficient in AI, and both technologies, methodologies, models, solutions, tools, all of that, right? So are you ready? Do you have that as a strength? Or is that maybe that's a weakness if you don't? Do you have financial resources committed? Is there part of what you're trying to get is maybe to break free some financial resources to make a couple bets, a couple investments. And then is there leadership support in it to invest in AI initiatives? Do they see the value? And I realize most people, it's inescapable these days. So we'll get to a later point where we talk about maturity model, but everyone is starting from a different place. Weaknesses, like we talked about, it could be you have a lot of internal data problems, data silos, different systems. It's hard to analyze. You may not have a mature kind of data warehouse approach or reporting approach. You might have skill gaps internally. You got to, hire or train or partner. There could be cultural resistance. So there could be employees that don't want you to work in AI, who think it's going to, somehow impact their jobs. So there's also the potential. You've got legacy systems that aren't easy to talk to, right? So don't have an API, work in more of a batch method. It all depends, right? So you're going to be building on top of these systems, this data, this everything. Are you ready for that? So the opportunities, this is kind of might create incentive, or maybe your team is already involved in AI. So if you've seen enough opportunity for market expansion, so new services you might be able to create, like I talked about, operational efficiency, which is really productivity, automating processes, customer insights. Like it's always been hard to make a lot of sense out of everything that you have. Do you know everything that your organization knows? Are you in a position to take advantage of it? So that would be insights, and then innovation leadership. How are you positioned in your industry? I would bet that in most industries, they'll start to emerge leaders in AI that are leveraging it. And finally, threats. No one likes to think about threats, but they're out there, and threats from your competitors, threats from new competitors. What is AI? Is there a threat to your business model? A lot of things to think about with threats from AI, right? So, of course, they're going to be, if you create AI services, you have to think about regulatory challenges. It's a little bit of the Wild West at the moment, but the laws are evolving, and I think Congress is just getting started. There are also some questions about security risks anytime you're building or creating new services inside of your organization that are technology based. And then, of course, ethical concerns related to AI, bias, transparency, and things like that. So quickly, I just put together a couple benchmarks to think about, and it's hard to come up with benchmarks because these will differ by industry, by size of the organization, kind of your maturity level, all these things, but just some things to think about in these different areas I already mentioned, around the data. Do you have a way to measure the quality of your data? Talent, do you actually have anyone working in data science? Infrastructure, is it scalable, AI ready? Do you have kind of, are you compatible with AI frameworks for development? And goals might be to have multiple AI projects and to see the success rate, measure them for, are they having an impact? And a very important was financial resources. What percentage of the IT budget is dedicated to AI projects to enable sustainable growth? So here's one that's at 10 to 20%, which could be substantial, right? Weaknesses, of course, would be your missing skills. There are kind of aspects of data governance that you're still may not have a handle on. So data requirements for compliance, GDPR, which is a requirement out of Europe for privacy, and CCPA is from the state of California, privacy requirements. But again, cultural barriers, all these things, outdated technology, it's hard to build on top of these things if that's where you are today. That's kind of the only point of it. Opportunities and threats, I won't go into as much, but I'll leave these here. It's, again, thinking through where are you positioned? And the only reason why I bring all those things up, the first round of AI SWOT analysis in your organization, is to figure out what's your AI maturity, okay? There's an AI maturity model. I've got a couple here. Here's one as an example as part of our planning frameworks from Gartner. So pretty straightforward. Maturity model, of course, assesses where you are as an organization and in terms of integrating AI into your operation, and where do you want to go? So this is kind of a strategic discussion framework of where are we, where do we want to go? And this webinar, honestly, is probably more for people in level 1 and level 2, but there are others that are kind of racing ahead, kind of building a lot of their own things that might be further along. But level 1 is awareness. There's interest. There's a worry about overhype. Is it too early to do anything? Maybe we just sit on the sidelines and wait. Then others start running experiments. That's experimentation. Then once the experiments pan out, how do I operationalize those experiments? How do I really make them part of the way I operate every day? And then systemically, how are things integrated? How are we managing all this? So anyway, this is I've got this model, and then I actually threw a couple others in here around. Here's one from Accenture, and it's similar. It's 2x2 instead, and they talk through experimenters, innovators, builders, achievers. With most 2x2s, like we're down here in the AI experimenters, but everyone wants to be here on the top right. So AI achievers. It was interesting on this model, and I include links to all these models, so you can go take a look later. And Accenture did a nice job where they looked at this by industry and evaluated industry participants kind of where they were. And I don't know, I thought that was interesting. It's always like an internal assessment, or oftentimes what a lot of these management consulting firms do, is help you figure out where you are, where your competitors are, and where you should be. So Next is the model that we from E&Y. It's again another AI maturity model. Any of these three will work, or if you want to have your own, that's fine. But the whole point of a maturity model is a way, as maybe for, if you're in program management or planning or IT or head of AI, whatever, you're tracking things. Where are you? Where do you want to go? What has to change for you to get there? Okay. And that's what we'll move into. So broadly, data governance and access. So I've set up a data governance organization at a previous employer at Siemens in 2005, 20 years ago, probably without more around kind of operational data from SAP, and probably without much mind towards AI potential. But it's really getting your house in order when it comes to data quality. If you think about it, how do you trust the decisions or the insights or any kind of automation if you can't trust the data that you have? If you're not able to really treat it as a resource and develop it as a resource, because it's incredibly important. And at the time, I remember with SAP wouldn't function without the proper data. I had been on a data migration team for SAP, and it was pretty important to get it right, or everything downstream would be wrong, or sometimes things just wouldn't work if the data wasn't there or the data wasn't accurate. So that's been a sea change, I think, over time. And that can be different within each organization, kind of the quality of things. So it's a little bit of some honesty and transparency internally about how things are and how to make things better. It's just a framework for data governance from Gartner, which I think isn't a bad place to start. In addition, so as with everything else, I have to worry about security and privacy from some of this information because it touches individuals, it touches clients, it touches things that are proprietary about products. I've got to have a risk management framework as I build AI services on top of our data as a resource. So this is a framework from the National Institutes of Standards and Technology. I'm sure there are others that are out there. I just thought this was a good one. And again, you need to have a clear approach around each of these topics if you're going to drive AI initiatives. You need to think through them. You need to have your own approach. And these things run in parallel to kind of getting started with an AI program. And many of you probably already have this in place. There could be people that it's, over security, but it's thinking about these aspects are important. I don't have to read all these to you. I think let me just keep going. Next, I couldn't help but use one of my favorite memes when we're talking about data integrity and quality. It just I seem to remember it's like in the old days, everyone says everything's fine. And as the little dog sits there in the fire. That's how I think about data quality inside many organizations. And data quality is such a big part of being able to trust the AI solution that you build. It's really a foundational input, and you need to be able to trust it because what you're doing is building on top of that. And so it'll impact everything downstream if it's incorrect, incomplete. So this is just the characteristics of data itself, so people think about quality, accuracy, but is all the data complete? Like for every record, do you have everything that you need? Is it consistent? Like, so sometimes a field in a means one thing to one person and something else to somebody else. And they're both using it wrong. So that's kind of a question about data definitions, data dictionaries, metadata. And are you consistent? So are there contradictions in the data? So all these things around this is just the intrinsic properties of the data itself, but there's also system um, characteristics of the data that you have to think about. Where is it accessible? Can it be recovered? Is it portable, traceable, understandable? Um, Again, the data is a key part of your recipe of a future AI solution, right? And so you want to know you're starting with good ingredients. So anyway, hopefully at your organization everything is fine, but uh, I'm suspicious it's something to whatever make a joke out of data quality. One of the things I came across when I was putting this together was honestly the ability to use AI to assess your organization's data readiness and data quality, right? So literally coming up with a model to evaluate your own data and score yourself on data quality. I included a link to some recent research in here, and here's just their picture where they want to evaluate their own data for across all these different parameters, which I think are important. And you don't have to read it all, but the idea is if you're building AI solutions, you have to worry about this, right? So you want to be able to trust, what goes in. There's the old saying, garbage in, garbage out. So we don't want any garbage in going into our AI solution. Oh no. Another thing here is more detail around data governance is there's this group called FAIR Principles or fair.org, gofair.org. So that link is in there as well. It's something to check out if you want to see kind of a more holistic view around data governance. I have to say that there's a lot of leadership coming from Europe in this area, and I just thought I would share that as well. So speaking of Europe, Europe also has tended to lead around legislation when it comes to AI, not just on data quality, but ethical AI use. So actually last month, there was the release of this framework convention on AI, human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. I think I linked to an article about it here. Um, I think, we're going to get this in the United States. I just don't know when. For those of you that are building solutions or at organizations that work in Europe, this is something to keep your eye on, right? So how to make sure that the AI that gets created is not discriminatory. It protects the privacy of individuals. It's transparent about the rules that it has incorporated. So it's really important that that there's a focus on human supervised AI. That AI is not just kind of out there in the wild on its own. So it's typical where a human needs to be in the loop around making decisions. So AI at this point, it's really a productivity tool. How to leverage AI for productivity with a human in the loop for making decisions, right? So anyway, so it's how to create safe AI, safe innovation, things like that. Last year, again, risk assessment mitigation is another model from Deloitte. Most of these organizations, BCG, McKinsey, Deloitte, Accenture, whatever, helping out with large transformations. Like, so we talked about digital transformations. Now these are kind of AI transformations. But it's having a model and being able to address these concerns around risk and how do I mitigate the risks inside the organization. Let me back up. So if you're trying to launch an AI program and you want to figure out about readiness of your organization, you just have to be, you put everything on the table and you want to be honest about the risks. And in my mind, I'm just imagining somebody standing in front of a executive committee and being asked questions about risks. What are we doing about the risks for AI? So use these models, use these frameworks as a way to prepare yourself for those kinds of questions. What are you going to do about it? How are you prepared? You don't want these kinds of things to come up downstream where you've already started to do something and you haven't thought through the risks. So it's important to just do your due diligence, protect the organization, think about these frameworks and models, and it's what's needed to make sure your AI program can get off the ground. Um, last, I know this kind of flying through these things, a framework for AI experiments. So and I'm going to cover this in more detail in the third workshop around an AI MVP. Okay, so part of it's how do I get ready to actually build? Okay, I deal with all the governance and security and readiness and the internal alignment. We got budget. We figured out use cases. Now what? Like, how do I get started? How do these things actually get built? Um, it's a lot. It's very similar to minimum viable product um, kind of process for getting launched, where you have a workflow and a user interaction, that you have to define. And then alongside of that, you're trying to create an AI model that supports it, right? So there's going to be a change to the user journey, and it's going to incorporate, insights, let's say, from the AI model. So, or maybe the AI model automates part of somebody's job, right? What they currently do requires them to do things manually, but AI, there's this concept of agents. An AI agent goes out and does something and brings back a result. So making that person's job a little more streamlined, right? So anyway, there's a approach to doing this around this concept of an MVP, and you build something really small and make an investment, get it launched, and see if you can achieve kind of the business outcome that you're after, right? Being very clear about the measures of success. And over time, if it continues to work, you integrate that into your standard, business process, right? So this is kind of a pretty quick, run through, but it's how you start creating these models that really support kind of your business. And like I said, initially, probably productivity oriented. In terms of running these AI MVPs, you need a team, a diverse team to do that. Product management, some design, program management, engineers, AI consultants, things like that. And it's a team effort because, as with anything that's uh, custom developed inside your organization, you have to work with the business sponsors, the process owners in the business, and support them and their needs. And I think this is a lot of where today's IT organization needs to move in this direction. Has to be able to do this, leverage AI, and not everything has to get built or developed internally. Sometimes it's leveraging existing models, existing solutions, but the organization needs to understand how to leverage what's out there, and not just say, oh, we're going to, a lot of decisions around creating a solution is required. I'll get into more of that in webinar number 3, but leave it to say that there are ways to run tests and make small investments and see if you can generate the ROI that you think is possible. The next webinar is more about running through the kind of what are the opportunities that you have, an opportunity assessment. What use cases are we going after? What are our measures of success? And then how do I prioritize? Okay. So I ran through that checklist pretty fast. I didn't want to leave you without anything that was technical. So I saw this overview of a reference data architecture for AI, but again, you're building out your AI toolbox up on top it sits on top of your systems of engagement, your analytics, and your systems of record down at the bottom. And there's a lot of effort to make that really work for the organization in different areas, different use cases, things like that. So, all right, as a pretty quick readiness checklist. Appreciate you kind of sticking with me for all of it. Okay, I've got Q&A. I'm not sure I see that there are any questions, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. My contact details are at the end. It's a bit of a drinking from the fire hose today, I know. So in terms of our, so we ran through the readiness workshop, how to evaluate your organizational readiness. Hopefully those resources will be of help. The next webinar is going to be held on December 5th around AI opportunity assessment. Our chief operating officer will be with me for that one, and we'll talk through more of maybe some examples of how to create a business case for AI, how to think about it, and how to prioritize. So, and then the last one is here in the middle of December, December 18th, around MVPs for AI development. So I'm here if you have any questions. We help clients kind of get started on their AI journey. We build for that, but really this webinar is for you, of helping you understand how to get started, how to complete due diligence, how to manage a program, launching AI inside your organization. So thank you for your time today, and please let me know if you have any questions. I'm here and ready to answer them for you. Thanks so much.